A child signed into an empty ballroom while the guests under golden chandeliers watched him break. Minji didn't know his name yet. She didn't know why his small hands moved in desperate loops, fingers forming shapes that no one bothered to read. She only knew that every adult in that glittering hall saw him and chose to look away. "Dance with me, please." His signs were careful, practiced, like he'd asked this question 100 times before and still believed someone might say yes. But no one did. Minji balanced a tray of champagne flutes against her hip, her server's uniform scratching against skin that hadn't seen a good night's sleep in weeks. The Grandview Hotel ballroom smelled like imported roses and old money, the kind of wealth that made her studio apartment's mold problem feel like a personal failure. She wasn't supposed to be watching the guests. She was supposed to be invisible. But the boy wasn't. He stood near the orchestra platform, maybe 6 years old, in a tiny suit that probably cost more than her rent. His dark hair fell across his forehead as he signed again, slower this time, like maybe the problem was speed. Like maybe if he just asked more carefully, someone would finally see him. A woman in diamonds pulled her daughter away when the boy stepped closer. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The little girl looked back, confused, but her mother's grip tightened. That's when Minji heard the whispers. "Oh, poor thing. It's not his fault, but still. My sister's friend said any child who plays with him gets sick within a week. Cursed. That whole family is cursed." Minji nearly dropped her tray. She'd heard rumors about the Kang twins. Everyone had. Yuna and Hyun Kang, the billionaire CEOs who'd built a tech empire before 30 and ruled it with matching ice-cold precision. They were legends in business circles, feared in boardrooms, and worshipped by investors. Their faces had graced magazine covers with headlines like "The Devil Twins" and "Silicon Valley's Most Ruthless Power Duo." But no one talked about their son. Or maybe they did. Just not kindly. "My nephew's school had to separate the special needs kids after that incident," a man muttered to his companion, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Parents complained, said it wasn't fair to expose normal children to language, David. The Kangs might hear you. They're not even here. And saw them leave 10 minutes ago for some emergency meeting." Minji's gaze snapped back to the boy. He was alone now, completely alone in a ballroom full of hundreds. The orchestra swelled into a waltz. Couples glided across the marble floor in perfect synchronization, their laughter bright and careless. The boy watched them, his small hands still forming that same desperate question. "Dance with me, please." A mother yanked her son backward so fast the kid stumbled. "Don't," she hissed. "It's quiet but venomous. Don't touch him." The boy's hands dropped. Minji felt something crack inside her chest. She knew that look, the one that said he'd learned not to expect kindness, the one that said he'd keep asking anyway because hope was the only thing left when the world refused to answer. Her younger brother used to look like that. Before the accident, before the funeral, before Minji learned that some goodbyes don't get closure, only silence. Her hands started trembling. The champagne glasses clinked against each other, a soft crystalline warning that she was losing her grip. She forced her fingers steady, forced her breathing even, forced herself to keep moving through the crowd like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong. A server bumped past her, annoyed. "Move, Minji. Table 7 needs refills." She nodded, mute, and started toward the far side of the ballroom. But her eyes kept finding the boy. He'd moved to a corner now, half hidden behind a marble column, still signing to himself, still asking. A group of women in silk gowns stood nearby, champagne flutes glinting under the lights. "It's tragic, really," one of them said, her voice dripping with performative sympathy. "All that money, and they still couldn't fix him. I heard he's the reason their company nearly collapsed last year. Bad luck follows that child everywhere." "Shh, what if the Kangs come back?" "They won't. They never stay long at these things, too busy pretending their family isn't falling apart." Minji's jaw clenched, She wanted to scream at them, wanted to shatter every champagne glass in her hands and make them see what they were doing. But servers didn't get to scream. Servers didn't get to have opinions. Servers got tips if they smiled and stayed quiet. So she smiled, and she stayed quiet. Until the boy signed again. This time, his hands trembled. This time, my tears slipped down his cheeks, silent and devastating. He wiped them away quickly, like he'd been taught that crying made things worse. Minji's feet stopped moving. She didn't decide to do it. Her body just moved. She set the tray down on the nearest table, ignoring the irritated huff from a guest. Her hands lifted slowly, carefully, forming shapes she hadn't used in years. Shapes her brother had taught her when words weren't enough. "Hi!" The boy's head snapped up. His eyes, dark and wide and full of something fragile, locked onto her hands. Minji's heart hammered. She signed again, slower, letting him see every movement. "I'm here." For a moment, the entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Then the boy smiled. It wasn't a big smile. It wasn't confident or bright. It was small and broken and desperate, the kind of smile that said he couldn't believe someone finally answered. He ran toward her. His small hands grabbed hers, signing frantically, joyfully, words tumbling over each other too fast for Minji to follow. But she didn't need to understand. She just needed to stay. The ballroom went silent. Every eye in the room turned toward them. Minji felt the weight of judgment pressing down like a physical force. She saw the shock, the disgust, the barely concealed horror on faces that had been laughing seconds ago. A woman whispered, "Is she insane? Someone should stop her. Where are the Kangs?" The boy didn't notice. He just kept signing, kept holding her hands like she was the only real thing in the world. Minji's throat tightened. Then the ballroom doors slammed open. Two women strode in, identical in height and presence, their tailored black suits sharper than any blade. Yuna and Hyun Kang moved like they owned the air itself, their expressions carved from ice and fury. Their eyes found Minji, found their son, found her hands still holding his. Hyun's voice cut through the silence like a blade, sharp and dangerous. "Get your hands off our son." Hyun's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The command sliced through the ballroom like winter cutting bone, sharp enough to make Minji's fingers go numb. She let go of the boy's hands. He grabbed them back immediately, his small fingers desperate, his signs frantic and pleading. "Stay, please, stay!" Minji's heart shattered. Yuna moved first, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown. She was identical to her sister in every way that mattered. Same height, same razor-sharp suit, a same expression that could freeze blood. But where Hyun's fury burned cold, Yuna's simmered just beneath the surface, controlled and lethal. "Do you have any idea?" Yuna said quietly, each word precise as a scalpel. "How many people have tried to use our son to get to us?" Minji opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "Servers," Hyun continued, her gaze never leaving Minji's face, "should know their place." The words landed like a slap. Minji felt heat flood her cheeks, shame and anger tangling until she couldn't tell them apart. Around them, the crowd watched with barely concealed fascination, their champagne glasses poised like they were witnessing an execution they'd paid to see. "I wasn't..." Minji's voice cracked. She forced it steady. "I wasn't trying to use him. He was signing. I know sign language. You just what?" Yuna's eyebrow arched. "Decided to insert yourself into a situation that had nothing to do with you?" "He was alone." The words came out harder than Minji intended. "He was asking someone to dance and everyone ignored him." "That's not your concern. He's 6 years old." "He's our son." Hyun stepped closer, and Minji finally understood why people called them devils. There was something inhuman in that perfect control, that absolute certainty. "And you don't get to decide what he needs." The boy tugged at Haeun's sleeve, signing rapidly. His mother's didn't look down. Minji's throat tightened. She'd seen this before. Adults talking over a child who couldn't make them listen. Adults deciding that silence meant consent, that difference meant less. "I have a brother," she said, her voice shaking now. "Had. He was nonverbal. I know what it looks like when... How touching." The voice came from Minji's left, dripping with false sympathy. The woman in diamonds, the one who'd pulled her daughter away earlier, stepped forward with a concerned expression that didn't reach her eyes. She placed a manicured hand on Yuna's arm, her voice pitched for the crowd. "I'm so glad you're here. I was about to call security myself." She turned to the watching guests, her face a mask of worry. This server was approaching Hajun quite aggressively. The poor boy looked frightened. "I was just about to intervene when you arrived." Minji's stomach dropped. "That's not..." "He was crying," the woman continued, her voice rising with manufactured distress. "I've been watching all evening, trying to keep the children away from... Well, you know how cruel kids can be. But then she just grabbed his hands and..." "I didn't grab him." Minji's hands clenched into fists. "He came to me. He was happy someone finally answered." "She's lying." The woman's eyes glittered. "I saw the whole thing. She was making a scene, drawing attention. I think she wanted to be noticed by you." She looked at the twins with understanding that made Minji want to scream. "You know how people are, always looking for an angle." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Agreement, confirmation, the story reshaping itself in real time. Yuna's expression turned to granite. "No." Minji took a step forward, her voice breaking. "No, that's not what happened. Ask him. Ask Hajun. He'll tell you..." "He's 6, Haeun said coldly, "and you're a stranger who thought she had the right to touch our child without permission." He was being bullied. The words ripped out of Minji's chest, too loud, too raw. Where were you? Where were you when everyone was calling him cursed? When parents were yanking their kids away like he was contagious? When grown adults were whispering that he brings bad luck? The ballroom went silent. Minji's breathing came hard and fast. She knew she should stop, knew she was crossing lines that would cost her everything. But the anger had teeth now, and it wouldn't let go. "You left him alone in a room full of people who hate him," she continued, her voice shaking with fury. "You prioritized some business meeting over your son being treated like he's broken, like he doesn't deserve basic human kindness." Yuna's face didn't change. But something flickered in her eyes, something that might have been pain if it wasn't buried so deep. "You know nothing about us?" Yuna said softly. "I know you weren't here." Haeun's jaw tightened. For 1 second, Minji thought she saw a crack in that perfect control. Guilt, maybe. Or rage. But then, the woman in diamonds spoke again, her voice sharp with false concern. "This is highly inappropriate. Someone call security." "No," Minji started. She's clearly unstable," the woman said to the twins, lowering her voice just enough to seem confidential while still being heard by half the room. "Making accusations, causing a scene. What if she tries to harm Hajun? You can't be too careful these days." That did it. 2 security guards appeared at Minji's sides, their grips firm on her arms. "Wait!" Minji twisted, trying to see Hajun. He was signing frantically, tears streaming down his face, his small body straining toward her. "Please, just listen." "Remove her," Haeun said. "Not loud, not cruel, just final." The guards dragged her backward. Minji's feet scrambled for purchase on the polished floor, her server's uniform tearing at the shoulder. The ballroom spun, chandeliers and silk gowns and judgmental faces blurring together. Hajun's scream was silent, but Minji felt it anyway. Then she was in the service hallway, then the back exit, then the freezing night air hit her face like a fist, and the metal door slammed shut behind her with a sound like a coffin closing. Minji stood in the alley, shaking. Her torn uniform hung loose. Her hands were empty. Her paycheck, the one she desperately needed to cover rent, was gone. She'd been fired, humiliated, thrown out like trash. Nowhere to go, no money, no plan. Just the cold and the dark and the crushing weight of failure pressing down on her chest until she couldn't breathe. She started walking. The city blurred past. Neon signs and car horns and people who didn't see her. Her feet carried her without direction, muscle memory taking her toward the one place that always felt like an ending. The bridge appeared through the fog, its iron rails slick with condensation. Below, the river ran black and endless. Minji stopped at the center, her hands gripping the cold metal. And suddenly she wasn't here anymore. She was 18 years old, holding her brother's hand in a hospital corridor that smelled like antiseptic and death. Minho, 7 years old, nonverbal, autistic, beautiful. The kindest person she'd ever known, even when the world refused to be kind back. The kids at school had called him broken, weird, creepy. They'd pushed him, mocked his stims, laughed when he couldn't answer their questions. And she'd tried. God, she'd tried. She'd worked 2 jobs while still in school, saved every penny for the therapy he needed, not the special education program that might have helped, but it was never enough, never fast enough. Then came the rain. The classmate who'd smiled and said, "Come on, let's go exploring." The drainage ditch that had flooded during the storm. Minho falling in, the current too strong, his hands reaching up. The classmate had run, had told police it was an accident, had never been charged, never even apologized. And Minji had watched her brother die in a hospital bed 3 days later, his small hand going still in hers, his eyes finally closing after fighting so hard to stay open. She'd failed him. She'd failed to protect him, to save him, to give him the life he deserved. Just like she'd failed Hajun tonight. Back in the present, Minji looked down at the river and saw him. Minho, 7 years old, thrashing in the black water. His mouth open in a silent scream, his hands reaching, begging her to save him this time. Minji climbed onto the railing, and the metal was ice against her palms. Below, her brother drowned. She jumped. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the penthouse for the 3rd night in a row. Yuna stood outside Hajun's bedroom door, her hand pressed flat against the wood, feeling each impact like a physical blow. Inside, her son was destroying everything he could reach: books, toys, the lamp shaped like a moon they'd bought him last Christmas. She heard the crash of porcelain against the wall, heard his silent sobs that somehow screamed louder than any voice. Haeun appeared beside her, exhaustion carved into every line of her face. The therapist said to give him space. "He's 6, Yuna's voice cracked. "He doesn't need space. He needs—" Another crash, harder this time. Yuna's hand dropped. They'd tried everything. Haeun had sat outside his door for hours, signing through the gap beneath it, her fingers moving in careful apologies that went unanswered. Yuna had brought his favorite foods, left them on trays that came back untouched. They'd offered screen time, toys, promises, anything to make him open the door. Hajun refused to even look at them. "Something's wrong," Haeun whispered. "This isn't just a tantrum." Yuna knew. She'd known since the moment they'd dragged him away from that server, his small body fighting their grip, his face wet with tears. She'd told herself they were protecting him, that they'd made the right choice. But Hajun hadn't signed a single word to them since that night. The silence was killing her. "Doctor." Sarah Chen arrived the next morning, her expression professionally calm as she observed Hajun through the bedroom's surveillance camera. The boy sat in the corner, knees pulled to his chest, rocking slightly. His favorite stuffed rabbit lay torn in half across the room. "Trauma response," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Something triggered him. Something specific." "The gala!" Yuna's hands clenched. "There was an incident with a server. We had her removed." Dr. Chen turned. "Just tell me everything." So they did. Every detail. The woman who'd stepped forward, the accusations. the way Hajun had screamed silently as security dragged the server away. When they finished, Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Did you verify the story?" she asked. Haeyun frowned. "What do you mean?" "The woman who accused the server. Did you confirm her version of events before you had the server removed?" The question landed like a fist. Yuna felt something cold settle in her stomach. She was a guest. She had no reason to lie. And the server had no reason to approach your son except malice. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle, but the implication cut deep. Hajun's reaction suggests you may have missed something critical. Haeyun's breath caught. "You think we made a mistake?" "I think," Dr. Chen said carefully, "that you need to find out what really happened. Because whatever it was, your son is still living it." The wealthy guest's name was Victoria Marsh, an owner of a boutique PR firm, married to a hedge fund manager, and, according to their corporate intelligence team, currently bidding for a contract with Kang Industries worth $8 million. Yuna made the call herself. "Ms. Marsh, this is Yuna Kang. I believe we need to discuss what happened at the gala." The woman's voice went bright with false warmth. "Oh, of course. I'm so glad I could help that night. Is Hajun doing better? Meet me at my office in 1 hour. Come alone." Silence. And then, quieter. "Is something wrong?" 1 hour. Yuna ended the call. Victoria Marsh arrived wearing a nervous smile and too much perfume. She sat across from Yuna and Haeyun in their glass-walled office, 30 floors above the city, her hands twisting in her lap. "I want the truth," Yuna said without preamble. "What really happened with the server?" Victoria's smile didn't waver. "I told you, she was aggressive. I was protecting your contract bid." Haeyun slid a folder across the desk. "So, $8 million, coincidentally submitted a day after the gala." The smile cracked. "If you lie to us again," Yuna continued, her voice dropping to something that could freeze blood, "your company won't just lose the bid. It will cease to exist. I will personally ensure that every door in this industry closes in your face." Victoria's composure shattered. "She wasn't aggressive," the woman whispered. "The server, she was just... Hajun went to her. He was happy. I saw it." Her voice broke. "But you two never notice anyone unless they're useful, so I thought if I helped you, if I was the one who protected your son, maybe you'd remember me." Haeyun's hands flattened on the desk, her knuckles white. "So you lied." Yuna's voice was deadly quiet. "You destroyed an innocent woman's livelihood and traumatized our son because you wanted our attention." "I'm sorry." Tears streaked Victoria's makeup. "I'm sorry, everyone was talking about how cursed he is. I thought..." "What did you say?" Haeyun stood slowly. Victoria looked up and something ugly crossed her face, something that had been hiding under the tears. "Your son is cursed," she said, her voice turning sharp. "Everyone knows it. That's why no one will play with him. That's why parents pull their children away." She smiled, bitter and mean. "You can threaten me all you want, but it won't change the truth. Bad things happen around that boy." Yuna's vision went red. Security escorted Victoria out 3 minutes later, the woman's sobs echoing down the marble hallway. Yuna and Haeyun stood in their office, the city sprawling below them, both of them silent. "Cursed," Haeyun finally said. "They think he's cursed." Yuna's throat was tight. "How long has this been happening?" "I don't know." They'd failed him. Not just that night at the gala. For months, maybe years, their son had been living in a world that believed he brought misfortune. And they'd been too focused on board meetings and quarterly reports to notice. The realization was suffocating. They went home, stood outside Hajun's locked door again, their hearts heavy with a guilt that had no bottom. Haeyun pulled out a piece of paper, started writing. Yuna watched her sister's hand shake as she formed the words. Then she took her own paper and did the same. They wrote everything they couldn't say. Every apology. Every promise. Say every desperate plea for forgiveness they didn't deserve. Yuna's tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. She didn't care. She slid the letter under Hajun's door, heard it whisper against the hardwood. Haeyeon's followed, the two pieces of paper lying side by side like a prayer. Then they waited. Minutes passed. 10, 20. Yuna's knees ached from kneeling on the floor, but she didn't move. Haeyeon sat beside her, their shoulders touching, both of them barely breathing. Then they heard it, the soft sound of paper being picked up. Yuna's heart stopped. Inside the room, Hajun sat on his bed, the two letters trembling in his small hands. He couldn't read all the words yet. He was only 6, but he understood enough. Understood the tear stains, understood the desperate, messy handwriting so different from his mother's usual perfect script, understood that they were hurting too. His fingers traced the wet spots where their tears had fallen. Something in his chest loosened, just a little, just enough. Hajun slid off the bed, walked to the door. His hand hovered over the lock for a long moment. Then he turned it. The door opened. Yuna and Haeyeon looked up from the floor, their faces raw and exhausted, and so full of hope it hurt to see. Hajun's hands moved slowly, carefully, forming shapes he hadn't used in 3 days. "I want the server from last night." Minji opened her eyes to white ceiling tiles and the steady beep of machines she couldn't name. Her throat burned. Her lungs felt like they'd been scraped raw from the inside. An IV needle tugged at the crook of her elbow, and when she tried to move, her whole body screamed in protest. She was alive. She shouldn't be. The memories crashed back all at once. The bridge, the black water, Minho's face beneath the surface, his hands reaching up. She'd jumped. She'd felt the freezing river close over her head, felt her lungs flood, felt herself sinking toward him. But she was here, in a hospital bed, breathing. The door opened before she could process it. A nurse walked in, clipboard in hand, her smile professional and tired. "You're awake. Good. How are you feeling?" Minji's voice came out like gravel. "What happened?" "You were pulled from the river last night. A jogger saw you go in and called 911. The paramedics got to you just in time." The nurse checked the IV line, her movements efficient. "You're lucky to be alive." Lucky. Minji closed her eyes. "Was there anyone else?" "I'm sorry?" "In the water. Did they find anyone else?" The nurse's expression shifted to something gentler. Pitying. "No, honey, just you." "Just her." Minji's chest tightened until she couldn't breathe properly. Minho hadn't been there. He'd been dead for 7 years. She'd hallucinated him, but let her grief drag her into the river chasing a ghost, nearly killed herself for a brother she couldn't save. The shame was suffocating. "I'll let the doctor know you're awake," the nurse said quietly, and left. Minji stared at the ceiling, tears sliding hot and silent down her temples. She'd failed Minho. And now she'd failed herself. Couldn't even die right. The door opened again. Minji turned her head, expecting the doctor. Instead, she saw them. Yuna and Haeyeon Kang stood in the doorway, still in their expensive suits, their faces carefully blank. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Minji's grief turned to fury. "Get out!" Yuna stepped forward. "We need to talk." "I said get out!" Minji's voice cracked, but the anger behind it was solid. "You had me thrown out like garbage. You called security. You didn't even ask." Her breath hitched. "You don't get to show up here and pretend you care." "We know." Haeyeon's voice was quieter than Minji had ever heard it. "We know what we did. Then leave." Neither of them moved. Yuna's jaw tightened. She looked like she was fighting something internal, some battle between pride and something else Minji couldn't name. When she spoke again, her voice was raw. "We were wrong." Minji's anger faltered, just for a second. "The woman at the gala," Haeyeon continued, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles had gone white. "Victoria Marsh. She lied about everything." Minji's breath caught. "We found her. Made her tell us the truth." Yuna's gaze didn't leave Minji's face. "You weren't aggressive. You weren't using Hajun. You were the only person in that entire ballroom who saw him as a child instead of a—" Her voice broke slightly. "Instead of a curse." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Minji wanted to feel vindicated, wanted to throw their apology back in their faces and watch them hurt the way she'd hurt. But all she felt was tired. "So you found out you made a mistake," Minji said flatly. "Congratulations, that doesn't change what you did." "No," Haeyeon's voice was barely above a whisper. "It doesn't." "Then why are you here?" Before either twin could answer, a small figure appeared in the doorway behind them. Hajun. His dark eyes scanned the hospital room frantically, searching until they landed on Minji. His whole face transformed, grief and hope and desperate relief crashing together in an expression too big for someone so small. He ran. His small sneakers slapped against the linoleum as he flew across the room, his arms already reaching out. He crashed into the side of Minji's hospital bed, his hands grabbing at the sheets, at her arm, trying to climb up. Minji froze. She looked at the twins, uncertain. They'd punished her for touching him before. What if... Yuna nodded. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Haeyeon smiled. It was small and broken, but real. Permission. Minji's arms moved before her brain caught up. She pulled Hajun onto the bed, ignoring the protest from her bruised ribs, and wrapped him in a hug that felt like breathing after drowning. He buried his face against her shoulder, his small body shaking. His hands moved between them, signing rapidly. "You're okay. You're here. I thought—" His signs dissolved into trembling. I thought you left like everyone else." Minji's throat closed. She signed back, her movements slow and careful. "I'm here. I'm okay." "You promise?" Minji's vision blurred. "I promise." Hajun pulled back just enough to look at her face, his own wet with tears. He signed again, slower now. "I missed you." Something in Minji's chest cracked open. She'd known this boy for one night, one single night, and he'd somehow found the exact shape of the hole her brother had left behind. She signed back. "I missed you too." Across the room, Yuna pulled something from her briefcase, a thick document bound in leather, official-looking. She set it on the rolling table beside Minji's bed with a soft thud. "We have a proposal," Yuna said. Minji looked up, her arms still around Hajun. Haeyeon stepped forward. "We want you to join our family." Minji's brain stuttered. "What?" "Legally, officially." Yuna tapped the contract. "We're asking you to marry us, both of us. Become Hajun's stepmother." The words didn't make sense. Minji stared at them, waiting for the punchline. "The contract outlines everything," Haeyeon continued, her voice steady now, businesslike. "Salary, benefits, healthcare. You'd live with us. Have your own space. Financial security." "We'll do everything to love you," Yuna added, and something in her voice made it sound less like a promise and more like a plea. "As long as you stay by his side." Minji's first instinct was to laugh. This was insane, a business transaction disguised as marriage. They'd thrown her out 3 days ago and now they wanted her to... Hajun's hands moved against her arm. Minji looked down. He was signing, his small face so full of hope it hurt to see. "My mom say you will be my new mom. Is that true?" Minji's heart stopped. Hajun signed again, faster now, excitement overtaking caution. "Are you going to live at our house, with me?" And there it was. The exact question that made this impossible to refuse. Minji looked at Hajun's face and saw Minho. Saw the brother she couldn't save, the child she'd failed, the guilt that had nearly drowned her last night. But she also saw something else, a second chance. A boy who needed someone to see him, to stay, to choose him when everyone else walked away. She needed the money, needed the shelter, needed something to pull her out of the grief that was eating her alive. But more than that, she needed this to mean something. Minji looked at the twins. Their faces were carefully neutral, but she saw the fear underneath, the desperation. They needed her, and they hated needing anyone. Good. I haven't forgiven you, Minji said, her voice hard. Money doesn't buy trust, and whatever this is, she gestured at the contract. It's not love. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Yuna's expression didn't change. We know. Minji took a breath, looked at Hajun, saw his hope, and saw her brother, saw the only path forward that didn't lead back to that bridge. She signed to Hajun while speaking to the twins. 3 months. I'll give this 3 months. After that, I'll decide if I can stay. Minji had learned the shape of peace in 3 weeks. It looked like Hajun's small hands forming the sign for happy when she made him pancakes. It sounded like his silent laughter when she tickled him before bedtime. It felt like the weight of him falling asleep against her shoulder while they watched cartoons with subtitles. She'd almost started to believe she deserved it. The penthouse was quiet that afternoon. Yuna and Haeun had left an hour ago for an emergency board meeting. Their tailored suits sharp as knives, their goodbye kisses to Hajun's forehead surprisingly gentle. They'd nodded at Minji on their way out. Not warm, but not cold either. Progress. Hajun sat cross-legged on the living room floor, building an elaborate tower from wooden blocks. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning his dark hair almost golden. Minji watched from the couch, her chest warm with something dangerously close to contentment. He was happy, safe, loved. She'd done that. For the first time in 7 years, she'd done something right. Hajun turned his head to check if his tower was straight, the afternoon light catching his profile just so, the slope of his nose, the concentration in his eyes, the way his small hands moved with careful precision. And Minji stopped breathing. Because she didn't see Hajun anymore. She saw Minho, 7 years old, alive, real. Her baby brother looked up at her and signed, his movements slow and deliberate. My I love you. The exact same way he'd signed it the morning before he died. Minji's vision tunneled, her heart slammed against her ribs. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. But he was there, right there, smiling at her like no time had passed at all. Minho, her voice cracked. Minho, baby, you're here. She was moving before thought caught up. Her feet carried her across the room, her hands reaching, her whole body desperate to hold him before he disappeared again. She'd lost him once. She couldn't lose him again. I'm here, she sobbed, dropping to her knees. I'm here, I've got you. She grabbed him and pulled him against her chest, wrapping her arms so tight nothing could take him away. He was warm, solid, real. After 7 years of guilt and grief and endless nightmares, her brother was finally back. I'm sorry, she choked out, rocking him. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. I tried so hard. A sound cut through her words, high-pitched, desperate, wrong, a cry. Minji's vision snapped back into focus like a camera lens adjusting. She wasn't holding Minho. She was holding Hajun. And he couldn't breathe. His small face was red, his mouth open in a silent scream, his hands pushing weakly against her arms. She'd been crushing him, squeezing so tight his ribs were compressed, his lungs unable to expand. Horror flooded Minji's system like ice water. She released him instantly, her hands flying back like she'd been burned. Hajun gasped, and a horrible wet sound, his chest heaving as he tried to pull in air. Tears streamed down his face. His whole body trembled. I'm sorry, Minji whispered, her voice breaking. I'm sorry. Hajun's eyes rolled back. His small body went limp, collapsing sideways onto the floor. Minji screamed. Her hands shook so violently she could barely grab her phone. She dialed 911, the numbers blurring through her tears. 911, what's your emergency? I hurt him. Minji's voice came out strangled. The boy, he's 6. He fainted. I squeezed him too hard. He couldn't breathe. Is he breathing now? Minji pressed trembling fingers to Hajun's neck, found a pulse, watched his chest rise and fall shallowly. Yes, but he's unconscious. Please hurry. The paramedics arrived in 7 minutes that felt like 7 hours. Minji stood frozen while they worked, checking Hajun's vitals, stabilizing him, loading him onto a stretcher. One of them asked her questions she couldn't answer. What happened? How long was he unconscious? Does he have any medical conditions? She followed them into the ambulance in silence, her mind a white noise of self-hatred. At the hospital, they took Hajun away. Minji sat in the waiting room, her hands still shaking, Minho's face still burned into her vision. Real, but not real. There, but gone. She was losing her mind. Maybe she'd already lost it. The waiting room doors slammed open. Yuna and Haeyeon burst through, their faces drained of color. Their usual composure shattered. They didn't even look at Minji, just rushed straight to the nurse's station, demanding answers in voices that could cut glass. 10 minutes later, a doctor emerged. He's awake. Bruised ribs, mild shock, but he'll be fine. Yuna's knees nearly buckled. Haeyeon caught her sister's elbow, her own breathing unsteady. Can we see him? Yuna asked. Of course. Room 304. They moved as one unit toward the elevators. Minji stood to follow, but Haeyeon's hand shot out, and he's stopping her. Wait here. It wasn't a request. Minji sank back into the plastic chair, her soul hollowing out. 20 minutes passed. 30. Minji counted the cracks in the linoleum floor and tried not to see Hajun's face turning red, tried not to hear his silent cry. When the twins finally came back, their expressions were carved from ice. What happened? Yuna's voice was deadly quiet. Minji's throat closed. She tried to speak, failed. Tell us. Haeyeon stepped closer. Now. So Minji told them everything. She told them about seeing Minho, about how real the hallucination was, about grabbing Hajun thinking he was her dead brother, about squeezing too tight, too desperate, too broken to tell the difference between past and present. Then she told them about the river, about seeing Minho drowning, about jumping in to save a ghost, about nearly dying because her mind couldn't separate grief from reality. By the time she finished, tears were streaming down her face, her voice raw and shredded. I didn't mean to hurt him, she whispered. I would never. I love him. I swear I love him. That's the problem. Yuna's voice was flat, empty. You love him so much you see someone else. Minji flinched. Haeyeon's expression was stone. You're mentally ill. The words landed like a death sentence. I can get help, Minji said desperately. Therapy, medication, whatever it takes. I'll fix this. You can't fix this. Yuna's jaw tightened. Not fast enough, not safely. Please, Minji's voice broke. Please don't take him away from me. We're not taking him away. Haeyeon's eyes were hard. We're protecting him. Yuna and Haeyeon looked at each other. Some silent conversation passed between them, twin to twin, the kind of understanding Minji would never be part of. When they spoke again, their voices overlapped, unified, final. You're not fit to be around our son. No matter what, Minji's world shattered into pieces too small to gather. She stood in that hospital corridor, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and felt every part of herself that had started to heal rip open again. The twins' faces were carved from ice, their verdict final, and Minji had no defense. They were right. She was dangerous, broken, unfixable. I understand, Minji whispered, her voice barely there. But Yuna's hand caught her wrist before she could turn away. Come home, Yuna said quietly. Minji's head snapped up, confusion flooding her system. What? You need to rest. Haeun's expression didn't soften, but something shifted behind her eyes. We'll talk after. They drove back to the penthouse in silence, Minji wedged between them in the back seat, her body trembling with exhaustion and dread. She didn't understand. They'd just told her she was unfit. Why bring her back? Why not just end this now? When they arrived, Haeun guided her to her bedroom with a hand on her lower back. Sleep, Haeun said. Hajun is resting in his room. We'll check on him. Minji wanted to ask questions, wanted to beg them not to send her away. But her body was shutting down, grief and shame, and 3 weeks of fragile hope collapsing under their own weight. She fell into bed still wearing her clothes, her vision already blurring. The last thing she heard was the soft click of her door closing. Then, nothing. Minji woke to darkness and the certainty that this was the end. Her chest heaved with silent sobs, panic clawing up her throat. They were going to send her away. She'd hurt Hajun, proven she couldn't be trusted, destroyed the only good thing she'd found in 7 years. Her bags were probably already packed, a check on the nightstand, a quiet professional dismissal. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to breathe through the grief. Then she felt it. Warmth. On both sides. Fingers threaded gently through hers. Minji's eyes flew open. Yuna sat on her left, Namhaeun on her right, both perched on the edge of her bed like they'd been keeping vigil for hours. Their hands held hers with a tenderness that made no sense, their faces soft in the dim light filtering through the curtains. "You're awake," Yuna murmured. Minji's voice came out broken. "I thought you were sending me away." "We're not." Haeun's thumb traced slow, deliberate circles against Minji's knuckles. We're not sending you anywhere." "But you said—" "We said things we needed to say in the moment." Yuna's gaze didn't waver. "But we've had time to think, to talk. And we realized something." Minji's breath caught. "What?" "That you're not the only one who's broken," Haeun said quietly. "We all are. And maybe that's why this works." Yuna leaned closer, her voice dropping to something intimate. "We want to take you somewhere. Just the 3 of us." "Where?" Minji whispered. "On a date." Yuna's lips curved into the smallest, most devastating smile. "A real one. No contracts, no Hajun, no responsibilities. Just us." Minji tried to pull her hands away, tried to resurrect the walls. "I can't. I'm not safe. You know what I did? We're not talking about that tonight." Haeun's grip tightened gently, anchoring her. "Tonight, we want you to focus on yourself. On what you want. What you feel." "I don't know if I remember how." "Then let us remind you." The restaurant existed in a world Minji had only glimpsed through windows. Candlelight danced across white linen, a pianist coaxed something achingly beautiful from ivory keys, and the private balcony they'd reserved overlooked the city like a kingdom laid at their feet. Yuna pulled out Minji's chair with a reverence that made her throat tight. Haeun poured wine into crystal glasses, her movements slow and deliberate, unlike she was handling something precious. "You're shaking," Haeun observed softly. Minji looked down at her trembling hands. "No one's ever done this for me." "Then we've already failed you once." Yuna's voice carried an edge of regret. "You should be used to being treated like you matter." The words settled in Minji's chest, warm and impossible. They talked through courses she barely tasted. Not about Hajun or hallucinations or the ways they'd all failed each other. They asked about her childhood before it broke, her dreams before survival became her only ambition, the small joys she'd buried under grief. "What did you want to be?" Haeun asked, leaning forward. "Before everything changed." "A teacher." Minji's voice was barely above a whisper. "For special children. I wanted to give them what Minho never had." Yuna's hand found hers across the table. "You still could. I'm too broken now. Broken things can be beautiful. Haeun's gaze held hers, and useful, and loved. Minji's breath hitched. The twins shared stories, too, about the loneliness of power, the weight of being identical but never truly known, the fear that kept them cold when all they wanted was to be warm. We built walls, Yuna admitted. So high we forgot how to let anyone in. Until you, Haeun added quietly. You walked through them like they didn't exist. Minji's cheeks flushed. I don't know how I did that. You were yourself. Yuna's thumb brushed across Minji's knuckles. Messy and honest and so full of love it terrified us. After dinner, they walked. The city glowed neon and gold around them, alive and indifferent to the three women discovering something fragile between heartbeats. Yuna's fingers laced through Minji's left hand. Haeun claimed her right. They stopped beneath a streetlight, bathed in amber. Yuna turned first, her hand coming up to cup Minji's face with a gentleness that made breathing difficult. Can I kiss you? Yuna's voice was barely there. Minji answered by closing the distance. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, asking permission with every breath. Then Yuna's fingers threaded into Minji's hair, pulling her closer, and the world narrowed to lips and warmth and the devastating relief of being wanted. When they broke apart, Minji's lungs burned. Haeun was watching them with eyes gone dark. Minji turned toward her, and Haeun's breath caught audibly. My turn, Haeun whispered. Her kiss was different, slower, deeper, thorough, in a way that unraveled Minji completely. Haeun's hands settled on her waist, anchoring her, while Yuna's lips found her temple, her jaw, the sensitive skin behind her ear. Minji drowned in them, in breath and touch and the terrifying possibility of being cherished. I need... Minji pulled back, dizzy. Bathroom, just a second. Inside, she pressed her palms against cool marble, trying to remember her own name. Her reflection showed flushed cheeks, kiss-swollen lips, eyes bright with something dangerous. Then voices drifted through the door. The Kang twins with that girl? I give it a month. Minji froze. Not with the cursed child. Her hands clenched. His aunt died babysitting him 2 years ago. Car crash. He survived without a scratch. That's why everyone says he's cursed. Rage ignited in Minji's chest like wildfire. She shoved the door open. 3 women in silk looked up, startled. Keep their names out of your mouth, Minji said, her voice shaking with fury. Hajun is a child, not a curse, and you're disgusting for spreading poison about a 6-year-old. She didn't wait for a response and walked out of there with her heels clicking powerfully on the hard floor. Outside, Yuna and Haeun stood waiting. They'd heard everything. Pride blazed in Yuna's eyes. Thank you. For defending him when we've stayed silent too long, Haeun added softly. The twins looked at each other, then at Minji. The air shifted, charged, inevitable. Yuna's voice dropped to velvet. Let's go home. We want to show you how grateful we are. Haeun's lips curved. In our bedroom. Minji's breath caught as they led her back to the penthouse, the elevator ride charged with anticipation that made her skin hum. The moment the door to their bedroom closed, Yuna's mouth found hers, hungry, reverent, asking and taking in the same breath. Haeun's hand slid down Minji's sides, her touch deliberate and worshipful. We want to show you, she murmured against Minji's neck, exactly how much you mean to us. What followed was a night Minji would carry in her bones forever. Yuna's fingers traced every scar, every place Minji had learned to hide, whispering that she was beautiful in the exact spots Minji had always believed herself broken. Haeun mapped her body with lips and breath, discovering what made Minji gasp, what made her arch into their touch, what made her forget she'd ever been anything but wanted. They worshipped her slowly, thoroughly, with a patience that felt like forgiveness, and a hunger that felt like home. Minji learned the sounds they made when she touched them back. Yuna's sharp intake of breath, Hyun's low moan that vibrated against Minji's skin. She learned how they moved together, how they anticipated each other's needs, with the ease of two people who'd been learning each other their entire lives. And when the three of them finally came together, tangled and breathless and completely undone, Minji felt something shift in her chest, something that felt dangerously like healing. Afterward, they lay in silk sheets that smelled like expensive detergent, and the three of them combined. Yuna's arm draped across Minji's waist, Haeun's fingers threaded through her hair, their breathing synchronized in the darkness, three hearts finding the same rhythm. "Stay," Yuna whispered against Minji's shoulder. Minji's throat tightened. "I'm trying." "Then keep trying," Hyun murmured. "We'll help." Minji closed her eyes and let herself believe it. Morning arrived in shades of gold, sunlight filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Minji woke wrapped in Yuna's arms, Hyun's hand resting possessively on her hip. For one perfect moment, she let herself feel safe. Then reality crashed back. Over breakfast, coffee and pastries Minji couldn't taste, she made her decision. "I need therapy," Minji said quietly, "real therapy, as soon as possible." Yuna looked up from her tablet, something like relief washing over her face. "We've already contacted the best trauma specialists in the city. Dr. Park comes highly recommended. I don't care who it is." Minji's hands clenched around her coffee cup. "I just need help. I can't—" Her voice broke. "I can't stay away from Hajun much longer. It's killing me. But I can't be near him until I fix this." Haeun reached across the table, covering Minji's trembling hand with her own. "You're not alone in this. We'll support you through every session, every setback, every step forward." "I know," Minji's eyes burned, "but I have to do the work myself." An hour later, the twins left for an emergency board meeting, their goodbye kisses lingering and reluctant. Minji stood at the penthouse window, watching their car disappear into the city below, and tried not to feel like she was already drowning. The caretaker, Mrs. Choi, a kind woman in her 60s, arrived shortly after. She settled into the living room with her knitting, giving Minji a warm smile. "Hajun's in his playroom," Mrs. Choi said gently. "The twins said you're to rest today, that you need space." Minji nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She retreated to her bedroom, but the walls felt like they were closing in. She could hear Hajun's footsteps above her. His room was directly overhead, and every sound felt like an accusation. He was so close, just upstairs. Probably wondering where she was, why she wasn't reading to him or playing or signing the silly jokes that made him laugh. Minji pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to breathe through the guilt. She needed to leave, needed to get out of the penthouse entirely before she broke and went to him, before she risked seeing Minho's face in his again. Minji grabbed her jacket and opened her bedroom door as quietly as possible. The hallway stretched empty and silent. Mrs. Choi's knitting needles clicked rhythmically from the living room. The elevator was just 30 feet away. She could do this. Just slip out, walk until her head cleared, come back when the therapy had started to work. Minji took 3 steps. Then she heard the patter of small feet. No. Hajun appeared around the corner, his dark eyes widening the moment he saw her. His whole face transformed, confusion melting into pure, devastating joy. He ran. His small sneakers slapped against the marble floor, his arms already reaching out, his hands forming signs so fast they blurred. "Minji, where have you been? I missed you so much. Are you okay? The caretaker said you were sick, but I wanted to see you." "No." Minji backed away, her voice cracking. "Hajun, no, stay back." He didn't understand. How could he? He was 6 years old and the person he loved was running from him. Hajun kept coming, his expression crumpling with hurt and confusion. "Why? What's wrong? Did I do something bad?" "Please." Minji's back hit her bedroom door. "You have to stay away from me." "But I love you." His signs were desperate now, tears already forming. "You're my mom. You promised you'd stay." The word mom shattered something in Minji's chest. She fumbled for the door handle, wrenched it open, and threw herself inside. The lock clicked with a sound like a coffin closing. Hajun reached the door 2 seconds later. His small fists pounded against the wood, soft impacts that felt like hammer blows to Minji's heart. She pressed her back against the door, sliding down to the floor, and felt each bang vibrate through her spine. She couldn't see him, but she knew he was crying. Could picture his face wet with tears, his mouth open in that silent scream that tore through walls. On the other hand, Mrs. Choi's hands beckoned on him, gentle and worried. "Hajun, sweetie, come away. She needs to rest." "Let's go play with your blocks." "No!" he signed frantically. "I need her. Please, please let me in." Minji covered her mouth with both hands, trying to muffle the sobs that wanted to escape. She was hurting him again, abandoning him, proving that everyone who called her unstable and dangerous was right. The guilt became a physical weight, crushing her chest until she couldn't breathe properly. That's when she saw him. Minho stood in the corner of her bedroom. He's 7 years old and heartbreakingly real. Tears streaked his face and his hands moved in signs that felt like knives. "You didn't save me," Minji's vision blurred. "Minho, you let me drown." His small face twisted with pain as his fingers signed. "And now you're doing the same thing to Hajun. You're leaving him alone, just like you left me." "I tried," Minji's voice broke. "I tried so hard, not hard enough." Minho's expression turned cold, accusing. "You were never enough." Outside the door, Hajun's pounding grew more desperate. Inside, Minho's condemnation grew louder. Minji pressed her hands over her ears, but it didn't help. Nothing helped. Then Minho's mouth opened and he spoke. Actual words, actual sound, coming from a boy who'd been nonverbal his entire short life. "You're useless." The word landed like a bullet. Minji's entire world tilted. Minho had never spoken. Never. Not once in 7 years. But now his voice was clear and childish, and filled with a hatred that Minji had always suspected lived beneath her own skin. "You couldn't save me," Minho said, his voice getting louder. "And you're going to fail Hajun too, because that's what you do. You fail everyone who needs you." "No!" Minji scrambled to her feet, her vision tunneling. "No, that's not true. I'm trying." "Trying isn't enough." Minho turned his back on her. It never was. He walked toward the window. Panic exploded in Minji's chest. She remembered the ditch, the rain, the water rising, Minho's hands reaching up as the current pulled him under. "Don't leave me again." Minji lunged forward, her hands grasping at empty air. "Please, Minho, don't go." Minho climbed onto the windowsill. The glass reflected his small form, and beyond it, 5 stories of empty air waited. "I'm already gone," he said quietly, "and it's your fault." He stepped off the ledge. Minji didn't think, didn't see the room around her, didn't register that Minho wasn't real, that the window was closed, that what she was about to do would destroy everything. She just saw her brother falling, and she jumped after him. Glass exploded around her in 1,000 glittering pieces. The window frame tore at her clothes, her skin. Then there was nothing but air and the terrible certainty that she'd made a mistake. The ground rushed up to meet her. Somewhere above, Hajun's silent scream tore through the penthouse, Mrs. Choi's horrified shout, the sound of running feet. Minji's last thought before impact was that she'd failed again. Then the world went black. The news spread faster than blood through water. By the time Minji's body hit the pavement outside the Kang penthouse, 3 people had already filmed it. By evening, the story was everywhere. Gossip sites, social media, whispered conversations in country clubs across the city. The server who married the Kang twins fell 5 stories. She was taking care of their cursed son. Another tragedy, just like the aunt. That boy destroys everyone who gets close. Yuna saw the headlines from Minji's hospital room, her phone screen glowing with venom. Her hands shook so violently she nearly threw the device against the wall. "They're calling him cursed again," she whispered. Haeun stood by the window, her reflection ghost-pale in the glass. "I know." "They're saying Hajun caused this." "I know." Yuna's grief turned to rage so fast it felt like combustion. She pulled out her phone and called their head of legal with a voice that could shatter Diamond. "Draft a statement. We're suing anyone who mentions our son in connection with this accident. I don't care who they are or how much money they have. Destroy them." The PR statement went live within an hour, cold and absolute. "The Kang family will pursue legal action against any individual or publication that spreads defamatory claims regarding our son. We have retained counsel and will seek maximum damages. This is your only warning." By the next morning, 3 gossip columnists had received cease and desist letters. By the end of the week, 2 prominent socialites found themselves named in actual lawsuits. The message was clear: speak about Hajun this way and face annihilation. But inside the penthouse, away from lawyers and PR teams, the twins were disintegrating. Yuna couldn't sleep. She paced the marble floors at 3 a.m, replaying every decision that led to Minji jumping through that window. They'd left her alone. They'd known she was fragile, unstable, drowning in trauma, and they'd prioritized a board meeting over her safety. "We killed her," Yuna said one night, her voice hollow. Haeun sat on the couch, staring at nothing. "She's not dead yet." "She might as well be." The doctors had been brutally honest. Minji was in a coma. Her spine was fractured in 3 places, internal bleeding. Traumatic brain injury. Even if she woke up, she might not be the same person, might not wake up at all. Hajun hadn't stopped crying since it happened. He refused to eat, wouldn't sleep. Just sat by his bedroom window, signing the same phrase over and over until his small hands trembled with exhaustion. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." The twins tried everything. They held him, read to him, promised him Minji would be okay. But Hajun knew they were lying. 6 years old. And he already understood that some promises couldn't be kept. On the 8th day, Hajun stopped signing entirely. He just stared out the window where Minji had fallen, his face empty in a way that terrified Yuna more than his tears ever had. "He thinks he caused this," Haeun said quietly. Yuna's chest tightened. "We need to take him to see her." "The doctors said—" "I don't care what the doctors said." Haeun's voice cracked. "Our son is breaking. He needs to see that she's still here, one that she's fighting." So they took him. The hospital room was too white, too sterile, too full of machines that beeped and hissed like mechanical breathing. Minji lay in the center of it all, small and broken and connected to more tubes than seemed possible. Hajun stood in the doorway, frozen. Yuna knelt beside him, her hand gentle on his shoulder. "She's sleeping, baby, but she can probably hear you." Hajun looked up at her, his eyes red and swollen. He signed slowly, carefully. "Can I touch her?" "Of course." Hajun approached the bed like it might shatter. He climbed up carefully, his small body curling against Minji's side, his head resting on her shoulder. His hands found hers, threading their fingers together with a gentleness that made Yuna's vision blur. Then he started signing against her palm. Slow, deliberate movements she couldn't see but might feel. "Please wake up. I love you. I'm sorry. Please don't leave me." Yuna moved to Minji's other side, her hand resting on Minji's arm. Haeun mirrored her, the 3 of them surrounding the woman who'd somehow become their center. "We're sorry," Yuna whispered, her voice breaking. "We should have protected you better, should have seen how much you were hurting. Come back to us," Haeun added, her composure finally crumbling. "Please, we can't do this without you." Minji heard everything. She existed in a space between living and dying, trapped in darkness but terrifyingly aware. She felt Hajun's small hands in hers, heard the twins' voices breaking around her, understood that they were there, that they cared, that she'd hurt them all by jumping. But she couldn't wake up, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but float in this gray nothing. Then the darkness shifted. Minho stood in front of her, 7 years old and whole, but different this time. Not angry, not accusing. Just her little brother, smiling the way he used to before the world taught him cruelty. So Minji's voice worked here, in this liminal space. "Minho," he signed to her. "Hi." Tears she couldn't feel in the real world poured down her face here. "I'm so sorry, I failed you. I let you die and I couldn't save you and I've been trying to fix it. But I just keep breaking everything." Minho stepped closer, his small hands gentle as they signed. "You didn't fail me." "I did. I didn't have enough money for the right school, the right therapy. I couldn't protect you from those kids. I couldn't." "You loved me." His signs were simple, final. That was enough. Minji shook her head violently. "It wasn't. You died. And that wasn't your fault." Minho's expression turned serious. "I'm sorry for what I said before, when you saw me in your room. That wasn't really me." Minji's breath caught. "That was your guilt talking," Minho continued. "Your brain showing you the worst things you believed about yourself. But they weren't true. Then why did you say them? Because you needed to hear them out loud so you could realize they were lies." Minho smiled sadly. "I never blamed you. I loved you. You were the best big sister in the whole world." Minji's chest cracked open. "I miss you so much." "I know, but Hajun is waiting." Minho's hands moved with gentle urgency. "He needs you, and you're hurting him by staying here with me. I don't know how to go back. I'm too broken." "You're not broken. You're healing." Minho's smile widened. "And Hajun deserves to see you finish healing. Don't let him down the way you think you let me down." Minji tried to reach for him, tried to hold on to this moment. "I don't want to lose you again." "You won't. I'll always be here." Minho touched his hand to his chest, then to hers. "But they won't be if you don't wake up. Choose life. Choose them." He started to fade, dissolving into light that didn't hurt to look at. "I love you," Minji whispered. I love you too," Minho signed one last time. "Now go." The darkness pulled back like a curtain. Minji felt her body again. The pain, the weight, the machines breathing for her. Felt Hajun's hands in hers. Heard Yuna's broken whisper. Smelled hospital antiseptic and Haeun's perfume. Her fingers twitched. Her eyes fluttered. Light flooded in, white and blinding. Minji's voice came out broken and raw, barely more than a whisper. "Hajun?" The word was barely a whisper, broken and raw, but it shattered the hospital room's heavy silence like a gunshot. Hajun's head snapped up when he felt the movement, his tear-stained face transforming from devastation to disbelief to explosive joy in the span of a heartbeat. His silent cry was visible in the way his mouth opened, his small body convulsing with sobs that had no sound. He climbed higher on the bed, his hands finding Minji's face and touching her cheeks like he needed proof she was real. "You're awake," he signed frantically. "You came back. You came back to me." Minji's vision blurred. Her body screamed with pain from a dozen different injuries, but all she felt was Hajun's warmth, his desperate relief, the way his small hands trembled against her skin. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Yuna's sob cut through the moment. She pressed her hand over her mouth, the tears streaming freely down her face, the first time Minji had ever seen her cry. Haeun's composure shattered too, her shoulders shaking as she gripped the bedrail like it was the only thing holding her upright. Then the room exploded into controlled chaos. Doctors rushed in, nurses checked monitors, machines beeped with renewed urgency. The twins refused to move even as medical staff tried to create space, their hands finding Minji's arms, her shoulders, on anywhere they could touch to confirm she was truly back. Recovery was brutal. Minji's spine had fractured in 3 places. The doctors said she was lucky to be alive, let alone walking. But walking wasn't easy. It was excruciating, humiliating work that required months of physical therapy and a pain tolerance Minji didn't know she possessed. Yuna and Hyun attended every session. They watched Minji struggle to stand, to take 3 steps without collapsing, to rebuild muscles that had forgotten their purpose. They cheered for victories that would seem pathetic to anyone else, holding herself upright for 30 seconds, walking 10 feet without assistance, climbing a single stair. "You're doing so well," Yuna would whisper, her hand supporting Minji's lower back. "We're so proud of you," Hyun would add, her voice thick with emotion, and Minji would cry through the pain and keep moving. Parallel to the physical torture came the emotional excavation. Dr. Park was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a voice that never judged, no matter what Minji confessed. She listened to everything: the hallucinations, the guilt, the belief that loving anyone meant destroying them. "Tell me about the Minho you saw," Dr. Park said one afternoon. "Not your brother, the one in your hallucinations." Minji described him, the anger, the accusations, the voice he'd never had in life, speaking only to condemn her. Dr. Park nodded slowly. "I don't think that was your brother." Minji's breath caught. "What?" "I think," Dr. Park said gently, "that was you, or rather, a part of you. An alter ego your mind created to externalize the guilt and self-hatred you couldn't process internally." The words settled over Minji like a weighted blanket. Your subconscious manifested your worst thoughts as Minho, because he was the person you loved most. The person you felt you'd failed most catastrophically. Dr. Park leaned forward. "But the real Minho never blamed you. Only you blamed you." Minji covered her face with her hands and wept. The therapy became about learning to forgive herself, to separate Minho's memory from her guilt, to honor her brother without drowning in shame every time she thought of him. It wasn't easy. Some days Minji backslid so far she couldn't get out of bed. But the twins were there, and Hajun was there. And slowly, agonizingly slowly, Minji started to believe she deserved to heal. Weeks blurred into months. The day Minji was discharged from the hospital, she could walk without assistance, climb stairs without crying, exist in her body without feeling like a prisoner of her own spine. Returning to the penthouse felt different. Not like entering a gilded cage or fulfilling a contract. It felt like coming home. The twins had always been affectionate after that first night together, but now they were shameless about it. Yuna brought Minji coffee every morning with a kiss that lingered, her fingers threading through Minji's hair. Hyun read to her every night, Minji's head in her lap, gentle touches that said, "You're real, you're here, you're ours." They found each other constantly, hands brushing in hallways, stolen kisses in the kitchen. Embraces that lasted longer than necessary because none of them wanted to let go. Hajun transformed into the child Minji had only glimpsed in moments before. He laughed silently, played without fear, signed elaborate stories about dragons and spaceships with enthusiasm that made her chest ache with joy. He followed Minji everywhere, not out of anxiety but happiness. He helped with her physical therapy exercises, reading beside her on the couch, falling asleep against her shoulder during movies. One evening, Minji was helping Hajun build a pillow fort when it hit her. She hadn't hallucinated in weeks. No glimpses of Minho in mirrors. No fractured reality bleeding through the present. Just this moment. Hajun's giggles. The twins arguing playfully about dinner in the kitchen. The warmth of being wanted. She was getting better. Actually genuinely healing. The realization stole her breath. Minji found the twins later that night in their bedroom, both reading side by side, eyeglasses perched on their noses in a way that made them look softer than their boardroom personas. Yuna looked up first. What is it? Minji crossed the room and sat between them, taking both their hands in hers. Her fingers trembled. I need to tell you something. Haeun set down her book, concern flickering across her face. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. Minji's voice shook. I haven't hallucinated in weeks. The therapy is working. I'm actually healing. And it's because of you two. Yuna's eyes glistened. Minji, let me finish. Minji squeezed their hands. You didn't give up on me, even when I was dangerous, even when I hurt Hajun, even when I jumped out a window. Her throat tightened. You could have walked away so many times, but you stayed. You supported me through every therapy session, every breakdown, every moment I hated myself. You loved me when I couldn't love myself. Tears slipped down Haeun's cheeks. You don't have to thank us for that. Yes, I do. Because for the first time in 7 years, I don't want to disappear. I want to be here, with you, with Hajun. I want to build a life instead of just surviving one. Yuna's hand came up to cup Minji's face. You've always been worth fighting for. I'm starting to believe that. Minji took a shaking breath. And there's something else I need to say, something I should have said weeks ago. Both twins went very still. Minji looked at Yuna, then Haeun, then back again. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but for once the fear felt like hope instead of terror. I love you, she whispered. Both of you. I'm in love with you. The silence that followed felt like the moment before a wave breaks. Then Yuna's face crumpled. Say it again. Minji smiled through her tears. I love you. I love you both. And I love Hajun. And I'm not going anywhere. Not anymore. Yuna kissed her first, desperate and tender and tasting like salt. Mam Haeun joined them, her lips finding Minji's temple, her cheek, her mouth. The three of them collapsed together in an embrace that felt like forgiveness, like healing, like every painful step had led to this exact moment. A small gasp from the doorway made them look up. Hajun stood there in his pajamas, his eyes wide, his hands already forming signs. Group hug? Minji laughed, a sound that felt foreign and perfect. Get over here! Hajun launched himself onto the bed, wiggling between the three of them until they were a tangle of limbs and laughter and love that had been earned through broken bones and shattered minds, and the choice to keep trying anyway. This was home. This was family. This was worth every scar. And for the first time since Minho died, Minji believed she deserved it. The end. This story isn't just about romance. It's about the families we build from broken pieces. It's about choosing to stay when everything in you screams to run. It's about learning that the person you need to forgive most is yourself. If this story made you feel something, if you saw yourself in Minji's struggle, if you cried for Hajun, if you believed in second chances, please hit that like button. It tells me these stories matter. Drop a comment telling me which moment broke you. Was it Hajun's silent cry? Minji jumping through the window? The final group hug? And I read every single one, and your words fuel these stories. And subscribe so you never miss another story about love that heals, families that choose each other, and characters who fight like hell to become the people they were always meant to be. You're not alone in your brokenness. None of us are. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Now go hug someone you love, and tell them why they matter.